Have you ever wondered about the anatomy of literally the most unwise decision in human history? I mean, a choice so totally catastrophic that it changed the very nature of existence. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to decode the ultimate story of temptation, rebellion, and monumental consequences. We are talking about John Milton's 17th century 10,000-line epic masterpiece, Paradise Lost.
Specifically, we're going to tackle one huge central question: what actually happens during and immediately after humanity's ultimate fall. We're going to map out the cause, the devastating effects, and really dig into the profound conceptual meanings hidden right there in the verse of books 9 and 10.
To do this, we are working directly from some high-level, structured OCR A-level revision notes. And honestly, these notes are just incredibly efficient at stripping away all the fluff and giving us that top-tier conceptual analysis we want. Okay, let's dive into this and extract the essential takeaways.
Here's our quick roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with the epic of humanity, move into Book 9, the fall, then Book 10, the aftermath. After that, we'll unpack sin, love, and order, and finally wrap up with free will and gender. So, let's kick things off with Part 1, the epic of humanity, a quick overview of Milton's masterpiece.
Moving right along to Part 2, Book 9, the fall. This is all about the temptation in Eden.
Let's move to this and see how this builds step by step. Satan has infiltrated paradise under the heavy cover of night, and you guys, his approach is chillingly calculated. First step, he takes on the form of a serpent. Now, conveniently, earlier that day, Eve, spurred by this really independent spirit, insists on working separately from Adam, even though he's protesting about her safety. So, finding her alone, Satan makes his move. He flatters her, praising her virtues above all other creatures, which totally starts to win her trust. When Eve is shocked that a snake can actually talk, he lies. He claims he gained speech and profound reason simply by eating from a specific tree. Intrigued, she asks to see it, and of course it's the forbidden tree of knowledge. Persuaded by his twisted logic and all that flattery, she takes the bite.
Now, what's fascinating here is the tragic difference in why they each make their choice. Eve is intellectually persuaded, right? She debates it, tastes it, and then actually brings it back to Adam. Adam, on the other hand, is just absolutely stunned. He immediately comprehends the lethal consequences of what she's done. But his choice isn't driven by the serpent's tricks at all. It's driven entirely by love. He literally cannot bear the thought of living without her. So he consciously resolves to share her doomed fate and eats the fruit himself.
And wow, the immediate fallout is ugly. That pure, innocent companionship they once shared, it vanishes in an absolute instant. They experience lust, fall into an exhausted sleep, and then wake up utterly overwhelmed by shame and guilt. Suddenly, they are hyper-aware of their nakedness, and instead of comforting each other, they instantly turn on one another, falling into bitter mutual blame. It is, quite literally, the worst morning after in human history.
Which brings us to Part 3, Book 10, the aftermath. It's time for judgment and punishment.
This original sin doesn't just mess up a garden. It triggers this massive, cinematic chain reaction across all of creation. Immediately, the guardian angels, completely burdened by failure, depart paradise for heaven. But God actually absolves them, basically saying, look, nothing could have stopped Satan's free will. God then sends the Son down to earth to pronounce judgment, though he does mercifully clothe the fallen couple. Meanwhile, sensing this colossal shift in the universe, the literal figures of sin and death abandon the gates of hell and construct a massive bridge straight to earth.
But perhaps the most poetic justice of all is reserved for Satan himself. He travels back to hell, strutting into pandemonium, fully expecting a hero's welcome and all these triumphant accolades from his demonic followers. Instead, his reality is a total nightmare. He's met with this deafening cacophony of collective hissing. In a brilliant stroke of divine punishment, Satan and his fallen angels are transformed into literal serpents. An illusion of the forbidden tree appears, but the moment they try to eat from it, the fruit turns to dry dust and ashes in their mouths. It is just the ultimate humiliation of his immense pride.
Meanwhile, back on Earth, the human emotional journey is deeply profound. Adam is agonizing over their fallen state, but he's trying really hard to resist total despair. Eve, on the other hand, is so desperate she actually suggests suicide to escape the impending curse on their future children. But Adam refuses. He remembers a prophecy that their offspring would one day seek vengeance against the serpent. So he pivots their mindset from destruction to redemption, proposing they repent. Together, they fall to their knees to pray for forgiveness. And here's a quick tip. Examiners absolutely love this kind of character trajectory. Moving from sin to despair to a proactive search for grace is one of the most vital takeaways when you're analyzing this text. All right, let's shift gears to part 4, Sin, Love, and Order, where we start decoding the deeper themes. So we know the plot, but let's talk about why it actually matters. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the vocabulary. To understand how Milton's world fundamentally fractured, we need these terms. Prelapsarian refers to the world before the fall, innocent, pure, and fundamentally open. Postlapsarian is the messy reality we live in now, a state defined by shame, mortality, and that sudden human desire to hide the truth and evade scrutiny.
And this fracturing of reality is tied directly to the conflict of hierarchy. Milton establishes a very rigid universe. On one side, you've got the angelic hierarchy, which is all about obedience, loyalty, and devotion to divine order. On the other side, the diabolic hierarchy is defined by pride, envy, and chaotic rebellion. See, Satan's tragic flaw is his pride. His absolute refusal to accept his limitations within God's structure forces him to try and build his own, entirely disordered hierarchy down in hell.
But here's the kicker. Satan's rebellion is mirrored right there on Earth. Milton underscores a very specific earthly hierarchy. Adam is presented with unquestionable authority, and Eve is positioned as subservient to him. This power imbalance is exactly what makes her vulnerable. So when she willfully disobeys and takes knowledge into her own hands, she completely shatters that established earthly order. It's an act of defiance that perfectly reflects the demonic rebellion, just scaled down to a human level. Finally, we arrive at part 5, Free Will and Gender, looking at the philosophical questions and societal norms. This complete disruption of order forces us to tackle some of the heaviest philosophical questions of the poem, things that honestly still resonate today. Milton is endlessly wrestling with the ultimate paradox. If God knows everything that will happen, divine predestination, do Adam and Eve actually have a choice? Are our own choices truly free? Well, Milton argues yes. He presents their actions as true manifestations of human free will, driven by real curiosity, temptation, and ego. God has foreknowledge, sure, but that foreknowledge doesn't negate human responsibility. It's a tragic choice, but it is an entirely autonomous one. And who makes that pivotal primary choice? Eve. The theme of gender here is just incredibly complex. On one hand, Eve embodies these 17th century patriarchal stereotypes. She's seen as the quote-unquote weaker vessel, highly susceptible to flattery. Yet, Milton also makes her fiercely intelligent. She eloquently challenges Adam. Her desire for knowledge actually encroaches on what was considered a traditionally masculine pursuit back then. By the end of Book 10, she isn't just some one-dimensional villain or temptress. She's a deeply complex figure of remorse, actively pushing Adam toward their mutual reconciliation with God.
So, the crucial point is this. Whether we are looking at Eve's frustration with her own weakness, Adam's frustration with Eve, or Satan's eternal, literal torment, the core message of Milton's epic remains totally universal. It serves as an incredibly powerful critique of human nature, illustrating how ego-driven decisions, a lack of self-control, and unchecked pride almost inevitably lead to despair and long-lasting regret. But all of this leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative thought to consider. If the fall of humanity is what ultimately allowed God to showcase his infinite mercy, grace, and the epic redemption of mankind, was Eve's choice simply a tragic flaw? Or was this massive disruption, this unwise decision, actually a necessary, fortunate step in a much grander divine plan? I'm going to leave you to dive into the text and decide that for yourself. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the narrative.